What could I build if I had a million motivated brick makers? Egypt turned the Hebrew clan into slaves that made bricks without straw. They must have been a masters at making brick. Who and why would twist scripture by myth and fable? Who but Satan would teach man pulled himself from the rock? Why tell lies to hide the guilt really being stored up to be punished? Some compliance of the first sin in heaven before the creation of this physical world. So the new connections, the mafia, new understanding for myself of the Greek connection. It would seem that I tended to think it's a United States central assassination of JFK when it was a worldwide mafia goings on. Let's do it. Let's study it. Here's my fair use disclaimer. We'll be looking at some videos, Bible studies. I'm going to be on this. I don't, part one, whatever. This will be built on. I wonder what that other picture was. The thumbnail. I got some pictures from today. Here's one. Let's start with this one. Got so, Sergio sent me this. I normally wouldn't read a thing, but John Voight, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone, special ambassadors. They're going to make America great again to where it can look like the golden age of Hollywood. Hollywood. They want you to tip over and hip hip hooray for Hollywood. The Hooked Cross. I guess you want to believe that it does go back to the Holy Roman Empire, back to the Greeks, and that's why, the Hitlers and the Nazis and the people that were trying to break away in Germany from the Greeks or start their own Greek thing. Well, RJ is back in Wisconsin. The famous Randy from Wisconsin is back in Wisconsin. And we'll be going over this. There's your thumbnail. Well, just thought that they just wanted to get drunk and partied. But as it turns out, she was a very important thing, Mary Jo Kopechne. And it was a murder. He kept, 10 hours before he subsequently told the police, oh, yeah, I had an accident and there is a dead woman in a car. He's okay. Don't worry about him. He's okay. He made it. He was a long-lasting senator. Wow. Look at that. There's a picture with the man that's got some white X's on his hat. And that's supposed to be a big deal because some of the things that there's a whole new rabbit trail opening up to bring it into the James Bond villain of Aristotle Onassis, who married Jackie Kay after he bumped off her husband. I guess that's when somebody welches on a mafia deal. That's what Aristotle Onassis was taught, that if somebody welches on a deal, and he was going to allow, a Kennedy to be president because Joseph Kennedy set him up in the shipping business. I'm talking about Aristotle Onassis. Let me read this one here. Lee Harvey Oswald, CIA, was carefully planted links to both ultra-right and to the communists, was a designated patsy. He was supposed to shoot Governor Conley, and he did. So maybe we can retie that in here. One of these guys was also set up with a gun. They're going to kill him. Okay, so that's what I used yesterday for thumbnail. This is everything in the world is all brand new, and it's time to get away from any of the other, theologies that are going to be talking about something different. You know what, Sergio, what I was thinking of? I might even start studying some of that as I more and more look. I tried to spell assassination, and it would never even let me. Like you can right click it and it'll say, "Oh, do you mean to spell it this way?" I had to look it up, spelling it the wrong way, and it's ASS. I did not know that, and I could have never guessed that assassination was a sass or as sass. I mean, I don't want to. I don't know. Just it bugged me. It bugged me big time. But I was telling Sergio, I'm going to start studying paralegal. I'm going to start suggesting that people who really want to be a help in a society, a litigious society, would be people that knew how to, you know, write the laws, do the laws. You don't have to get a doctorate in jurisprudence. That's what a lawyer is. You went and got a master's and a PhD, and now I know the law. Well, once you know part of the law, and they have a lot of paralegals, you can file, a suit against somebody and say, you know what, this civilly is wrong. The way, they sued OJ after he, they blew their trials or whatever happened. He could, I'm not innocent. I don't know if he was proven guilty, but paralegal is the way to go. And just let these people know. I mean, we're supposed to be wise as they are, foxes, right? Wise as serpents. Not all of us because we're busy, but not be a serpent. But we have to know what they're doing, man. Come on, man. I'm not trying to say we need to be serpents. Short brick by brick. One of the last things I watched before it came on. Oh, great. Great. There is no way that is not working here. Let's get this turned on.
Red building brick. What were made here were called fire brick. And they're used for furnaces. They're used for big boilers and things that one would have to use. They also use the same clay to make sewer pipe because the gases create great.
Here, which was probably the most important brick industry in the United States, having the largest influence, is a significant part of the story.
I don't know of any other city except for maybe Pittsburgh and Baltimore that has quite as much brick as we have here in St. Louis.
It's all about brick. And anyway, this town,
Raisin Dogtown, dated around 1930 when St. Louis was still the leading producer of brick in the United States. And why wouldn't we be? This area was once filled with rich deposits of clay.
Right, and it was Egypt. So got some brick things. I got a lot of stuff to go over here, man. This is the thing, the conspiracy file that set me off in a new direction of, wow, I've got to quit being United States centric, like the world has always revolved around us. Oh, no, it did not. I mean, I watched the whole thing. Howard Hughes' disappearance, little background on it.
Things. And that's kind of like the quote unquote official story of how he made all his money. But according to the Gemstone file, he was the worldwide head of the mafia. He was basically the most powerful man alive, the guy behind the scenes who was influencing and orchestrating things for the mafia. And it's claimed, Gemstone claims at least, that he made all his money selling drugs. He was basically the world's biggest drug supplier, heroin in particular, opium. And it's not really that much of a stretch to imagine that this was indeed the case. Aristotle Onassis's official story is that he was penniless at 18. He was totally broke. And then he moved to Argentina and he lived there for about a decade. And whatever happened in Argentina turned him from being penniless to being one of the richest people in the world. And then he moved back to the Greece area, or he moved to Scorpios rather. And, this map is kind of like the main drug trade routes at the time. The opium always originated in like the Turkey Mediterranean area where Aristotle Onassis lived.
Honestly, this is he just keeps going, man.
And Hughes Aerospace and Howard Hughes factor prominently into the story that's told in the Gemstone file. And so because Bruce Roberts had access to some of the really high up people at Hughes Aerospace, it's believed that some of the high up people were the ones feeding him information about what was really happening with Howard Hughes and some of the people around him.
Supposedly, Howard Hughes, nobody saw him or talked to him the last 20 years of his life. They think that the thug from the 007 crime lord that lived on an island, Aristotle Onassis, kidnapped him, used all his money to buy up Las Vegas and take over the mafia because he felt he got double crossed by the Kennedys and the Irish, Italian, Jewish mobs here in the United States. That's my understanding.
He ran multiple billion-dollar companies that were involved in everything from building planes to offshore drilling to his medical institute, which was doing like a lot of cutting-edge medical research. Howard Hughes was an avid flyer, and he set multiple world records for speed, and these were all in planes that he built himself. And this was like a big deal back in the day, like flying around the globe and seeing who could have the fastest trip around the globe. For whatever reason, people back then were like obsessed with this. And anytime Howard Hughes would embark on one of his trips, it was just constantly front page news. They would constantly print updates in the newspaper. And whenever he got back, there was just these massive parades with thousands of people. And he was there right in the middle of it all, waving like a politician and going through the streets.
But what happened then? Where'd he go? What happened? Go, man. Where's my...
Six was he was just constantly buying off and paying off politicians in order to get like favorable things passed for his companies. And one of the things he did do, and this was, kind of a big deal at the time, or actually it was years later that it was revealed, but he did give Richard Nixon's brother, Donald Nixon, a $250,000 non-repayable loan, which, non-repayable loan is basically a bribe. That's a fancy way of saying a bribe.
Ooh, I guess that's not going out too much on a limb. He disappeared.
This group called the Mormon Mafia.
The Mormon Mafia. And I'm going to put Harry Reid. Some of you may remember he was like the Nancy Pelosi sidekick. Mitt Romney Mormon from, he's from Nevada, Las Vegas area. He's the Area 51, I think, representative. I don't know, but he was the Mormon Mafia. Somehow they were in on it, man.
Moved in and basically controlled the Howard Hughes empire. And not a lot is known about these guys. They were said to be in the 2 decades from the mid-1950s up until he died. They were said to be the only people who ever interacted with Howard Hughes. And it's really hard to find that much info about these guys. One of the head guy of the Mormon Mafia was named Frank William Gay, and actually his family, his relatives, were
the Gay family, Mormon royalty. Did you know that? Yikes. That doesn't look weird at all, does it? It looks super weird.
Featured on this Real Housewives of Salt Lake City show, in case you watched that. And then so the Mormon Mafia came in to control the Hughes empire right around the time that Gemstone says he was kidnapped. And something else that happened was this guy, Robert Mayhew, came in and he became basically the overseer of the entire Hughes campaign. This guy had major connections to the mafia, which we'll get into because
they do get into it, and I'll get into it with you later. But right now, we're just moving on, man. What's this?
Jimmy Hoffa and put him in jail.
So when the Kennedy that was promised, you promised me, Jack or Mr. Onassis, that you would make a Kennedy a president. He goes, okay, I'll do it. But then supposedly the Kennedys, Bobby and Johnny, wanted to say, no, we'll take it from here. I've heard that before. So with this guy as a vegetable, they said, guess what, Dad? We got it. And you're going to cross the mafia. You're dead men walking.
It happened just very, very shortly right after JFK was elected, or inaugurated, rather. His dad had a massive stroke that left him just basically a vegetable. He was unable to talk. He was unable to move. He was in a wheelchair.
It's our history of the
Really
mafia.
couldn't do anything. And, it's pretty well known. It's pretty commonly known that the Kennedys did kind of go to war with the mafia around this time. Robert Kennedy became Attorney General, the top cop in the land. And he did start arresting a lot of mafia people. You can see in that headline, conviction of organized criminals grew by 350% when Robert Kennedy was Attorney General. So this definitely did happen.
Somehow they got tricked into thinking they were going to do it. And then there's these, the mafia started talking. Mayhew says he recruited man for CIA and Castro poison plot. This is something I highly recommend, that you put in your to watch list.
There was supposed to be JFK was supposed to be killed in Chicago when he was in town to attend the Army Air Force football game at Soldier Field, and there was a full assassination team waiting for him. This almost went down, and it was exposed by this guy Abraham Bolden, who was the first Black Secret Service agent assigned to presidential protection. And JFK canceled his trip at the last minute, and this didn't happen. But there was this guy, Thomas Arthur Valley, on the left. He was basically a spitting image of Lee Harvey Oswald. They had so much in common that...
Now, he doesn't mean they look exactly like each other. I suppose if he tipped his face down, the nose would look similar, maybe grinned a little more. But what this guy was an ex-Marine. He was the same thing. He was set up to be the patsy if they were able to kill Kennedy on November 2nd.
Anyone who's looked into this believes that he was kind of like the Lee Harvey Oswald of the Chicago assassination plot. He was going to be the guy blamed for it and arrested and paraded in front of everyone. There's, been kind of some stories about this Chicago assassination plot in the years since, but at the time, in the early 1970s, hardly anybody knew about this, and all this info it came out years later. So the fact that the Gemstone file mentions not only this plot, but it also mentions Thomas Arthur Valley by name, really lends me to believe that Bruce Roberts knew something. That's...
Now, what did Bruce Roberts, he's the man who wrote the Gemstone Files, which you should, watch this video, I guess. But what doesn't he tell you? That they added 1,000 years. That the mud flood was Armageddon. That the golden age is past. That it's a flat earth nation. Because it's a flat earth. It doesn't tell you any of that. It just gives you more rabbit holes. That's their job. They want to rabbit hole you to keep you hooked on their fables. Is that, fables and myths of. But we know that this was Satan's plan. And we'll look at how is he the ruler of this world that has the power of death. Is it final death, or let's just keep rolling. Yeah. A little bit more. We're going to jump ahead because, like I said, we can't hit it all. But remember, we just studied the Bonanno family and how the very first person that it ended up to be a JFK thing too. What was it? Donnie Brasco. That was his undercover name, and he brought down the Bonanno family. But the other families just kept right on working. Bonanno also claimed in a book that he had discussed the assassination on the seconds, but that didn't work out. A little bit more.
I just don't see how someone could just blindly make all this stuff up off the top of their head. And the interesting thing here also is that John Rosselli was scheduled to testify in a reinvestigation into the JFK murder in 1976. And again, he's the guy who Gemstone fingers as the man responsible for killing JFK. He's also the guy who Bill Bonanno says was responsible for killing JFK. And before Johnny Rosselli could testify in this investigation, his body was found in the Atlantic Ocean in an oil drum with its legs cut off. So clearly someone did not want him talking.
Because you can't do that. Fingerprint found, RFK assassination is weird. Let's catch the end of that in the beginning of the Chappaquiddick.
And again, this did happen too. Eric Younger was a judge in 1974. And again, like, it's just kind of really minor details about this that aren't details that just aren't commonly known that are included in Gemstone that leads me to believe that there's at least somewhat of it has at least some credibility, and Bruce Roberts had some sort of connections or someone feeding him this information, because it's just such a random bit of information to say that Ella Younger's son was given a judgeship at age 30, which basically no one actually knew that. If you look into it, it did actually happen. And then Gemstone also mentions this documentary. You can find it on YouTube. It's really good. It's considered one of the better documentaries about the Robert Kennedy killing. It's called The Second Gun. And this is one of the more explosive and definitely controversial claims that the Gemstone file makes. In October 1968, Jackie Kennedy was now free to marry Aristotle Onassis. It's an old mafia rule. If someone welches on a deal, you kill him and you take his gun and his girl. In this case, Jackie and the Pentagon. So basically, it's saying that Jackie Kennedy, who
So here's 39-year-old, recently widowed, marrying the shipping magnate, the 007, Austin Powers thug, the head of the world thing that lives on an island. He's pushing 80 years old, and then he's the one that told the paparazzi, yeah, my wife poses nude on the deck. I'll bet you could see her from that vantage point, just to embarrass her. I don't think he really loved her and wanted to marry her. I think there's Sweet Caroline.
But marrying Aristotle Onassis, didn't marry him out of love or anything. She married him because she was essentially forced to, due to this old mafia code that if someone screws you on a deal, you kill him and you take his girl. Personally, I've never heard of this mafia.
Yeah, I never heard of it either, because technically she disappeared on a boat. She might have been in love with his money. She was a rich and a powerful possible transvestite that, that's just what they say.
Mafia code, maybe it is a thing and people in the know have actually heard of it. But definitely this claim that, Jackie Kennedy was basically forced to marry Aristotle Onassis is, definitely hard to believe. At any rate, it is a strange marriage. You do have to admit that. Jackie Kennedy was only 39. She was young, absolutely gorgeous, very rich herself. She was very well off, and probably considered one of the most desirable bachelorettes in the world at the time. And she marries Aristotle Onassis, who was almost twice her age. He lived halfway across the world on a private island. And so she basically had to just throw her life away and move to this island that was halfway across the world and, start over and have a brand new life. So it was definitely a strange marriage for a number of reasons. That means it's still pretty hard to believe. But then there's this whole mystery about her, just weeks before JFK was killed, her husband was killed, she was hanging out with Aristotle Onassis on his yacht. and there was this big mystery about
See,
them.
I
They
want you
didn't
to
know where the
notice the
yacht was. They
date
couldn't find
there
Jackie.
of September 18th, 1963. That's pretty. September, October, boom, November 22nd or November 2nd. They were going to get him, man. She probably knew.
Kennedy, and this was just right before JFK was killed. So again, there's a lot of just really weird things about this statement and this claim, but hey, who knows? And so now we get into the Chappaquiddick incident. I'll go over what it is real quick because I feel like this isn't as well known as maybe the JFK or Robert Kennedy assassination. So basically, the Chappaquiddick incident.
Now, we have studied, and I have been trying to share the blame with men and women, and the Freemasons, they have their, Eastern Light stars, their Job's daughters, and their just dozens, I guess, or a lot of women Freemasons that, they wanted to be a part of it and they were allowed. You are in. You can be there, have sororities. You could start in some countries when you're 10, 12, 14 in Mexico. They have their own agenda. Stop it if you don't believe. If you go like, no, they're good. They're the good ones, and the men are the. Is every heart equally desperately wicked until the Lord changes it? I think so. That's my opinion.
Then was this girl in the upper left, Mary Jo Kopechny. She worked for Robert Kennedy when he was still alive, and she was at a party after he had died, and Ted Kennedy was there. Ted Kennedy was Robert and JFK's brother. Ted Kennedy drove her to the ferry so she could leave. The place is an island, and the only way to get off the island is a ferry. And he crashed his car in a lake, and the car sunk. Ted Kennedy escaped and swam to safety. Mary Jo Kopechny, who was in the car, drowned and died. And then there was all this like weird stuff going on. It took him like 10 or 11 hours before he actually reported the crime to police. So he waited like almost a half day before he reported that he'd been in a car wreck and there was a dead body in the car.
Then he stayed in the Senate for another 30 years.
So it's a very weird situation, and Gemstone has some pretty interesting explanations for what happened. So it says in July 1969, Mary Jo Kopechny, devoted JFK girl and one of Bobby's trusted aides, was in charge of packing up his files after his assassination in LA. She read too much.
Shoot, I honestly, I needed to, we'll come back to that. What I was going to show here is with all the Job daughters, it looks like they know about that handshake thing, right? Put your knuckle, your thumb right on their knuckle. I'm your girl. I am in it. We're in it. Women power. We're helping. But, this isn't Camelot. It's murder.
Bechtel. Teddy's good friend John Tunney called to complain that Aliotto's mafia friend Cyril Magnin and others had tried to bribe Jess Unruh to switch from the governor. It's a lot of names here, but I'll explain it in the next line or the next slide. Tried to bribe Jess Unruh to switch from the governor's race to run for the Senate for the seat that John Tunney wanted, so that Aliotto would have an easier run for governor. Teddy called Aliotto, who told him to go to hell. Then Teddy called the rest to arrange for yet another mafia murder. Okay, so that was a lot of names. It was kind of confusing, but I'll try to explain it very simply. So basically, this dude on the left, Joe Aliotto, was the mayor of San Francisco for a number of years, for a pretty long time.
I was confused there for a second. Some of you might be thinking, like, I wonder if that's Judge Alito, the one that the Supreme Court conservative Catholic that got smothered. No, he died of a heart attack, and he just happened to be found with a pillow over his face.
He wanted to run for governor of California, and he was going to be running against this guy on the left, Jesse Unruh, who was a very popular politician at the time. Gemstone is saying that Joe Aliotto bribed Jesse Unruh to drop out of the governor race and instead run for Senate of California. And they wanted him to run for Senate instead. If he ran for Senate, he'd be opposing this guy whose name is John Tunney.
So they're, they have pushbacks in the mob.
Says that she was locked up in a heroin factory for 60 days, and heroin fumes turned her into a total junkie. And she did go missing for 60 days, just randomly. No one could find her. No one knew it happened. And then she finally did appear after 2 months, and she claimed she had complete memory loss. She didn't remember anything at all. She didn't know where she was, who she was with, nothing at all. She said she didn't remember anything. And then the strangest part is right after she reappeared, she killed her husband with an axe and practically chopped his head off. The attack was so severe. And
Only daughter of former world heavyweight boxing champion Gene Tooney. Wow. Those boxing people.
it was even said in this article about it that her friend says she hasn't been well, since she went missing for 2 months.
Yeah.
Off the face of the earth for the past 15 years. So the gemstone intrigue continues. Irving wrote his book, and the publishers announced it. Onassis knew someone had given Irving the information. He thought it was Mayhew and fired him in November of 1970. On Thanksgiving Eve 1970, in the middle of the night, Hughes made a well-publicized secret departure from Las Vegas to the Bahamas.
Well-publicized secret departure because nobody ever saw him. Even the guy that controlled his money, in court had to go like, no, I never really saw him for 17 years that I worked for him. We changed memos, exchanged the memos. I know you want a little bit more of the Watergate, Pentagon Papers.
And so this is where we start getting into Watergate, and I think I'm just going to kind of scroll through these entries and not go into too much detail.
You'll
I'll be honest,
recognize
personally,
the
I do not
names.
know hardly anything about Watergate. I know the basics, but I've never really looked into it. It's always kind of seemed like, just very insignificant compared to like the Kennedy assassination or some of these other assassinations. Like a couple phones were bugged in Washington, D.C., which doesn't really seem like that big of a deal because probably every phone is bugged in Washington, D.C.
I'll just add that Hillary Clinton was invited to go to Washington by one of the few Republicans from Chicago. And there she was going to work on defending, the Republicans from Watergate. She met Bill Clinton. She changed sides. They went to scholarship travels through the Rhodes Scholarship. Somehow ended up in USSR, as it was called at the time. Got some incriminating photographs, according to some people. I'm just spreading rumors. And the history went down like this. What's that map?
And rewind the tapes, maybe. At any rate, she was working on this device and the phone rang and she kept her foot on the pedal and reached over to get the phone, and she kind of demonstrated for the media, and then that accidentally erased the tape, and she demonstrated for the media how she did it.
That's the office of how you work for the president. I type the memos, How do you get to your desk? Oh, you just close the drawer, I guess. What a tight. I thought I had a messy go thing. Load. Are you loading?
Hughes, supposedly he was, officially he was this like decrepit old man on the verge of dying, but he was also being jet setted around the world by his team. They went from the Bahamas to Nicaragua to London to a couple other different places. And it was kind of around this time that there was like a little chatter and a few newspaper articles about, well, is Howard Hughes actually even alive? And so there was some sort of lawsuit, and they were trying to extradite him from Panama or from the Bahamas. And eventually this was just called off. They didn't even try to do it. And
Man, you would have a hard time imagining the what it was like growing up, being a Hughes, you know, and we go like, "Where's all the money?" And I'd be like, "Man, I wish I knew." You'll find this interesting.
Stone mentions this, 50 years ago. Supposedly Curlian photography, and this is a really good video on it on YouTube. There's a couple others out there. Supposedly it almost like photographs someone's aura, and some of the photographs that are done with Curlian photography are just absolutely incredible. I won't. I'm still kind of not really all that familiar with it myself, so I won't get into any more detail. But it's a really interesting topic if you want to look into it. In March 1975, Onassis died. The mafia organized itself, or organization regrouped itself. South Vietnam's Thu, dubious about which way the mafia cookie would crumble now that Onassis was dead, decided the time was right to split. He abandoned the war effort, cursed the U.S., and split for Taiwan. His plane so overloaded with gold bullion that he had to dump some of it overboard. And so Aristotle Onassis died, and this kind of threw the mafia, according to Gemstone, threw the mafia kind of into disarray. And this guy Thu was the leader of South Vietnam. And what Gemstone says is correct. He did kind of peace out of South Vietnam around on this date, and it was revealed that later he did have like just a ton of gold that he was. And so after going through that, obviously the main question is, well, is it legit? People have always wondered this. Is the Gemstone file actually legit? This is one of my favorite researchers from kind of this time period. Her name was Mae Brussel.
Doing some hard work as a mom back in the day, right? It's not complete because did it mention the John Birch Society that I personally, lived a life that saw how this worked and explained it for the last 8-9 years. To leave out Tyler, Texas is obfuscation. This is more fresh information only recently being, brought to the table from a small channel that I normally wouldn't get 5,000 views, I don't think. But you need to hear this part. We'll wrap it up. Not wrap up the video. There's so much Bible and everything else.
Sirhan has always seemed like a very strange assassin. He doesn't really fit the bill of all these other assassins who are, white dudes. A lot of times they have 3 names and they have connections to either the military or the CIA. Sirhan was not that at all. He's a very strange anomaly when it comes to some of these assassins. And he has some real interesting connections to Eddie Nash. And Eddie Nash was this big gangster who basically ran LA at the time. It's pretty difficult to find information out there about Eddie Nash, but I did make this video that kind of dove into if he could have been involved in Robert Kennedy's murder. So you can check that out if you want to. Obviously, the idea that Aristotle Onassis married Jackie Kennedy is
She looks
basically
happy.
a flex, saying that, yeah, I was the one who killed JFK and now I'm taking his girl. This is obviously the claim that most people kind of find hard to believe when it comes to the Gemstone file. I agree. It seems like a pretty outlandish thing. It's definitely a very strange marriage, this marriage between Jackie Kennedy and Onassis. But, according to Gemstone, it's some sort of mafia code where if a guy screws you, you take his girl. You kill him and you take his girl. Obviously, the mafia is very secretive, and there's a lot of things about it that, those of us who aren't involved in it probably don't know and probably won't understand due to this, very strong code of silence that surrounds the mafia. Again, like the Howard Hughes stuff that Gemstone covers, I think this Gemstone explanation is way more believable than the quote unquote official story of him just going crazy and vanishing off the face of the earth for 2 decades. The official story is just pretty ludicrous. And as I mentioned a couple of times, this will probably be my next video. So I'm really looking forward to diving into the Howard Hughes mystery. I didn't mention this throughout this video. I did kind of go into this in more detail in my other video on the Gemstone file. But it's really interesting to me all the connections between the Gemstone file and some of the James Bond movies. So the plot of Diamonds Are Forever is that Blofeld, the main bad guy, kidnaps a Texas billionaire. His name is Willard White, and he holds him as a prisoner on his private island, which is really identical to what Gemstone says happened to Howard Hughes. And if you look at like the similarities between Blofeld, the main bad guy in the Bond movies, and or the early Bond movies, and Aristotle Onassis, they're like gangsters from the other video. They both were Greek shipping like billionaires. They both lived on private islands in the Mediterranean Sea. They both owned a casino in Monte Carlo, named the casino and it's very interesting, just these similarities between Blofeld and Aristotle Onassis. The author of the Bond novels, Ian Fleming, was a very high-ranking security officer in Britain's intelligence unit before he became a writer. And so people have wondered, like maybe Ian Fleming knew what was up, and he was kind of like dropping.
He wasn't dropping it. He was writing chitty chitty bang bang, telling how it is because he had to. Come on, let's move on.
Nationalist secret society. But the swastika is much older than that. It has ancient roots in India, where it represented good luck and well-being. The word swastika comes from the old Sanskrit language, meaning conducive to well-being. Across Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, it's a positive spiritual symbol. The swastika also appeared in ancient Greece for Zeus, in Rome for Jupiter, and in Norse mythology for Thor. Native American tribes like the Navajo and Hopi used it as a good luck charm. Even the US 45th Infantry Division had a swastika shoulder patch. Despite its global history as a symbol of positivity, the Nazis' 20-year use has left a lasting stain on the symbol. The double victory rune, or Doppel-Siegrune in German, was the iconic symbol of the Schutzstaffel, short SS, meaning something like Defense Corps. Designed in 1930, originated in Prussian military tradition. First associated with the Prussian Death's Head Hussars, an elite cavalry unit, it was a symbol originating in medieval Germany and eastern France, inspired by wolf traps used in the Middle Ages. The symbol features a Z-shaped hook.
Yeah, it's all that ruins, Freemason stuff, man.
1945, shown on flags, uniforms, and other items. They represented aspects of Nazi ideology and Germanic mysticism, as well as virtues idealized in SS members. Some of the key runes were the Ode by the Nazis. Originally found in the symbology of cultures like the Old Norse and Celts, the sun wheel has countless variations. In Nazi Germany, this symbol gained prominence through its association with the SS, particularly.
I wonder if we're going to look at later the Isle of Man as one of the great big wooden wheels that they made before they did steam power, man. Kind of looks like it. You can tell me if you agree later. There's some more.
H as the first and eighth letters of the alphabet. 88 stands for Heil Hitler, meaning Hail Hitler, referencing the Nazi salute with the eighth letter. 14 refers to David Lane's 14 words. He was an American neo-Nazi and founder of the defunct terrorist organization The Order. His slogans are popular among neo-Nazis and the alt-right. And then we got 111. This is a numeric code used by the Aryan Knights, a prison gang from Idaho. But there's also numerous other ones. The Atomwaffen Division logo. This features a Waffen-SS-style shield with a trefoil, the radiation warning symbol. Sometimes it's surrounded by a garland, a common element in white supremacist logos. Atomwaffen, meaning atomic weapons in German, is a neo-Nazi group that began in the US in 2016 and became globally infamous for extreme violence, including murders and terrorism.
Wow, this got modern very quickly, didn't it? The situation here only needs to grow, remembering that all of this atomic and it's all fake. There is no quantum math. There is zero dark matter in this universe. There is not 97% dark matter in the universe. There's 0%. It's all fake. The atomic weapons are fake. The way World War II ended was fake. You guys know that, right? I know you moderators know that. Caffeine. This is set up to, the sacred herbs, marijuana, tobacco, the number one, coffee. They've all been polluted with sugar. And man who dug himself out of the rock, according to their Renaissance, think we invented coffee.
Coffee has transformed history, shaped our culture, and even fertilized our gardens. From an accidental discovery by a herd of goats to becoming the world's favorite beverage, coffee truly is a great invention.
Can't show too much of these types. They'll go, you use more than 10% of my video with no commentary. I'll be like, I said 5 words. And they'll be like, whatever, dude. You gonna argue with me about it? What's up? Thus begins the Latin race. I was just going like, what is up with this girl's sandal? What is up with it? And her other foot isn't shown. Thus begins the Latin race. Yep, that's, because after 1711, when Satan was loose, they had to quit. The remnant of people. Let's redecorate this. A lot of the main houses with this kind of like, we worship the gods. And we worship the gods. And they did this in notable places. This is one ceiling that Italy gave to France for 99 years. They use it as their embassy today. And the roof this is one of the paintings on the roof that is not on fire in the Palazzo Farnese. Been around long time. And after Satan is loose, they said, let's paint it, man. And when humans are motivated, and they get motivated by the money, man, they can paint it. They can do it. So the Order of the New Templars, that's where the swastika started. Again, in the beginning, the flag of the Order of the New Templars. Proto-fascist secret society. 1900s, 1950, combined esoteric piety with the racial sciences. And they had pseudoscience at the time. They believed this with all of their heart because of Darwinism. And so they needed, because this comes from that era when Darwinism ruled and they were going back to the old ways. Well, if the gods then of the Greeks were true, bring right-wing extremists in post-World War I together, talk about their betrayals. He did it. He founded this order. He used the swastika first, that they say, whoa, he changed the colors. Hitler changed the colors, man. He put a white background, black cross, red flag, rotated 45 degrees. Boom, it's a new swastika. So they wanted beauty pageants and, they were all about the symbol, yellow flag, 4 fleur-de-lis. The golden background symbolizes eternity. The lilies, racial purity. And the red swastika, the rising white man who was definitely in their world the top of the survival of the fittest because they had the brains to do it. So they're getting their information about Arosophy and Armanism, esoteric ideological systems, developed by the guys that, hey, look, the swastika, everybody knows about it, but the wide road uses it as, oh, they were so, and then they studied the Werner von Braun, and he hooked up with the occultist guy, Jack, in whatever I forget his last name. But it all come down to, we got to get to the moon, man, and that's fake too. It's all fake, but the ideas of von List and Lanz von Liebenfeld were part of the general occult revival that occurred in Austria and Germany in a very recent reset time. The reset inside resets that happen, they can confiscate the gold and say to do it, but it's always been heroin and the money that's in charge. If you had any idea how much slave labor is required to get gold. Ugh. But, theosophy, it's all right there. These are the things that started because they believed in eugenics, Darwinism, anything but God, the new ABCs, anything but Christ. They're still long. These guys were into it, man. They had a. So when you click on that, the overwhelming esoteric whatever's going on in Germany, you come to, well, how did it happen? Well, what have we been saying? Just add to that the John Birch Society and the Rosicrucians. Well, wait, they did that already. I get it. Okay, so only thing they need is to wake up to the flat earth nation and the Bible is true, and you have to be called because the timeline's there. I'm going to keep these tabs open because I'm going to be going over it when I can talk to RJ. Ginger root and meteor dust is still being used in German hospitals because there's still a Steiner hospital that still hasn't changed, that they believe in that. What type of photography was that would show your aura? And then they would, to get people healthy, during the COVID pandemic, where global leaders have peddled quack treatments, miracle cures, Germany has often stood out as a shining beacon for science. The country that first developed the diagnostic test to detect coronavirus and the first vaccine that was approved in that warp speed race to make money off of it. But Germany is where people got sick and found themselves taken to hospitals, Steiner-owned hospitals, 18 of them in Berlin alone, 16. The spiritual scientist of the clairvoyant Rudolf Steiner, who I'd like to have $1 for every time. Have I ever heard of him? He's got a lot of good insights about race. So they still do these things, they march in with the anti-vaxxers in Germany because the Steiner groups there, they know it. They're teaching another thing. They've got another way of doing it, along with his applied philosophy. Anthroposophy remains a minority movement, but in Germany, there's still a lot of people teaching it. And they still are they did it in 2019 and 2020 in Germany. They were put pellets on them, and they didn't sign a waiver or anything. The people just, if you go to their hospital, they're going to heal you. They include moist chest compresses with powdered ginger root, mustard flower or yarrow tea, as well as a potentized phosphorus and correspondingly potentized meteoritic iron in the form of homeopathic pellets. Whoa. Okay, that's what they did. It was manufactured in Germany, widely prescribed as a preventative, and we couldn't even talk about that ivermectin. They did it. They've been planning it, and now you know. Here's that water well I told you I'd show you. It looks like a swastika, kind of, if you would, some of them do. This big one doesn't, but there's a picture of it around 1900. Just on the steam power had been around for quite a while, but they still used it. That kind of looks weird, doesn't it? Like a swastika. Gonna run now. Water wheel. Yeah. So it was for mining. Tin, probably. I don't know. That's a good picture. Hey, let's climb up here. Wow, did we really just have to throw this switch and here we go? Where's the steam power? That's what he's saying. Where's the water? Let's see this. We continued today on the magical mystery tour of the Mason catalog. An elaborate technical wheel, possibly hydroelectric generator. Figures ascending a spiral staircase, no less. Shouldn't be too hard to identify. And indeed, many immediately recognized this as the Laxey wheel on the Isle of Man, built in 1850. So this worked through the steam revolution on that mine. Get that mine working, man. There's another picture of it. You're going to go visit it today? There it is. That's cool, right? That's like a symbolic swastika. Infinite Tauruses. In with the good air, out with the bad air, in with the good blood, out with the bad blood. I just wanted to show you. Look at that's an axe. Ceremonial, I'm sure. Here's some more weird stuff. What were the Gilded Age better than the Bible times? Were we smarter? I mean, probably idols. There was only one true God. Good thing that the Babylonians and the Persians were called by God to point out to their Gentile people, hey, you should check out this other God. He is the God of all gods, the Most High God that was spirit. And because there was sin in heaven, he made an object lesson for the angels. And these people were smart enough to throw down these things so that we could figure out the stones are crying out. Flat Earth Nation and everything else. What am I looking at? Oh, I should just back it up here. What is this? Just a bunch of pictures? Graphic scheme from Bothus de Arithmica. I was throwing this together rather quickly. As you know, I don't have a lot of time in between videos. And that video I watched about Jackie Onassis and Aristotle, the JFK. So he got one book, huh? Thanks for the not information. So hand-drawn maps. Jerusalem in the center. We're getting on to them. This is from somebody who wanted to show that, we're still a part of the world today. Our culture matters. Armenia. And this is showing Armenia on the old maps. There it is. We're just going like, look, we were on the original world maps. Yes, you were. Look at you. The Macedonian conquest and the rise of Greek, where people were Greek, but they were worshiping the God Most High of Israel because Cyrus told them to, Nebuchadnezzar told them to, Artaxerxes told them to. And the Jews said, well, we can turn this into a den of thieves, man. That shouldn't be hard. It's easy if you're motivated. This is the secret doors to the Star Chamber from the Sun King, Louis XIV. Private bed chamber. The etching on the door panels is of sacred geometry from the 1500s. Weirdos.
The officer class, envisaged by Himmler as the priests and high priests of the SS, are to be distinguished by the award of special symbols of their place in the hierarchy. At Himmler's personal discretion, members of the SS Corps of Leaders can be awarded the SS Dagger. The dagger is the visible sign of SS nobility and of the favor of the all-powerful Himmler. Irrespective of rank, proven SS men are presented with a silver death's head signet ring. The ring is based on a design created for him.
Man, it sounds like a fraternity initiation to me.
True to the deeply secretive nature of the SS, Himmler has banned all but the most trustworthy from visiting Wewelsburg. Bartels has virtually excluded local companies and labor from the project. Instead, contingents of the Pioneer Corps have been drafted to the region.
And, when America talks about our pioneers, they're the guys with the shovels and the axes that go and clear the way. But it's always a military operation. Stop it, you pioneer lovers.
From all over Germany. In the renovation of the castle interior, Himmler spares no expense. Paneling and furnishings, doors and balustrade.
When you're highly motivated, you can do it.
The amount which must be repaid is reduced for every child the family produces. By 1940, 1,700,000 loans will have been granted.
This was a breeding program for orphans. I wonder where they went.
In the massive north tower of the castle is an inner sanctum, a vast circular hall, its walls 12 feet thick. Around the chamber stand 12 columns. On the floor is a mosaic of swastikas, forming a sunwheel of 12 radiating spokes. In this strange chamber, Himmler and his chosen 12 commune with the Aryan race.
They're gay, too. There's a lot of proof that some of these Nazi people were gay. I don't know if Hitler was gay. I think he liked young girls like Eva Braun. I'm only saying that, like, when Hitler was like 40, he dated a 20-year-old. I get that a lot more than, oh, I like little boys.
By now, the racial doctrines of National Socialism have found ardent support far beyond the frontiers of the German Reich. In the United States of America, the German-American Bund, led by Fritz Kund, is secretly supported by the German Foreign Office.
You know that.
Embraced by a rapidly expanding armed SS. By June 1940, Heinrich Himmler's army, now renamed the Waffen-SS, is a formidable motorized force.
Wow. And you do know, right? I'll remind you what I teach. That's pretty much they had a war, they cleaned it up, and then Germany surrendered. Russia, United States, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and China all attacked Japan on the date they claimed they dropped the first atomic bomb. That's fake, man. The math don't work. You want to have a math contest with me and prove to me there's 97% dark matter in this world? You'll lose, man. There's not even a hint there's such a thing as dark matter. That's why these new videos coming out about the gemstone and a new connection to Aristotle and Onassis, it's interesting. That's not our rabbit trail. Our rabbit trail is the Bible. Let's do some Bible. That's the book for we. The gemstone file was good. It's a conspiracy theory. It didn't mention the John Birch Society, didn't get into the Rosicrucians. Covered the mafia, man. They're into it. The mafia rules the world. He's right about that. You got that right. It's not that the JFK assassination and everything was used by Satan to mainstream Roman Catholicism. Thank you, Mel Gibson and those other Catholics that Donald Trump just made make the golden age Hollywood again. That takes us to this Bible verse. Since therefore the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise partook of the same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death. So at that time, at least in Hebrews, he had the power of death. So normally I want to go we'll just real quickly let you get a quick overview of that saying. Is it narco death? It's not. It's this death. The shadow of death. You're not going to taste death at the point of death. You're going to die. It's a dying. It's got to be like that. Used in the Old Testament to denote death, both physical and spiritual. This New Testament, thanatos, primarily refers to physical death, cessation of life, but also encompasses spiritual death. Well, let's check out its root word. Is it strong? My goodness. That's as strong as it can get. I was not expecting that. So how is he going to do it? He's going to destroy the power. Is it the dynamite power of the speaking in tongues? It's not. It's kratos. 10 out of 12 in another. Don't lose it. He has done mighty deeds, growing mightily and prevailing. Would you want to talk about that power of our God? You want to use this word. 1 Timothy 6:16 calls it eternal dominion. What do we need to stay away from? For we did not follow cleverly devised myths when we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were eyewitnesses of his majesty. This is the Apostle Peter. And he's telling them, we've made it this far. You keep holding on. He was writing it to them. We know that now. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Father. 2 Timothy 2:4. So they will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myth. There are so many Christians that want to be like, I'm first in line to go to the moon. I feel like it shouldn't be out of bounds now for people on the narrow road to just ask people if they want to chat you up and are being friendly. Just go like, do you know anybody that's currently in a fraternal order? Are you in a fraternal order? But I guess they're allowed to lie. But it's them against us. We're going to be a very narrow road, but we do not have to be stupid about it. We could be paralegals. Boom, we could hide the people and be in the world, but not of it, but just not in the city. 2 Timothy 1:4, nor devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies, which promote speculations rather than, here's our Bible. Well, no, what about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene that proves she was in charge of Peter, and that's why men hated it. Men hated it. Fable. That's a fable of the Bible, Edith. So there is something that is a testimony. The Ark of the Testimony. That's pretty consistent translation for a word. Our testimony is, how we should incline our heart. Not to covetousness. When you pray, ask and you will receive. Incline my heart to your testimonies and to not love money. Turn my eyes away from worthless things. Wrapping up our final chapter 6. Here's what we have to do. Nehemiah was tasked supernaturally, by circumstances. Here I was, the king cupbearer. Now I'm rebuilding the city because I was never sad in his sight, and he could tell, something wrong with you? Oh, I'm sad about this. Go rebuild it. I've been leaning that way anyway. I'll pay for it. And so he gets threatened, again, that's Tobiah and Sanballat, you have set up prophets to proclaim you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. They're trying to say Nehemiah was declaring himself king. He's going from cupbearer to the king of a new thing. And then he thought about it. He goes like, wait a minute. Then I sent to him saying, no such things as you say have been done. You're completely making them up out of your own mind. For you want to frighten us, thinking that we'll stop the work. Now, so that he went to another person, a guy that he thought was wise. He went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of Mehetabel, who was confined to his home. He said, let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They are coming to kill you by night. But Nehemiah was still thinking, like, who do I trust? He goes like, but I said, should such a man as I run away? And what man such as I could go into the temple and live? I will not go in. And I understood and I saw that God had not sent him, But he had pronounced this prophecy against me because of Tobiah and Sanballat, who hired him, paid him, and probably looked so sincere, I'm confined to my house, but I can still do this, said the fake Howard Hughes or whatever that. Come on. For this purpose, he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin. Wow. I am almost, there's so much in my head, but the words are hard, because, they can tell whatever I am, I know what kind of person I'm going to be. I'm going to believe the Bible, but that's not, when you have these dreams and visions like I have, and they've changed the world, and I've seen the light from behind me, pretty hard for me not to believe that everything's coming true like this and that we're on the right path. Their atomic bombs are fake. They faked World War II. The mafia is in control. That's what I've been telling you all along. Go back and look at some old videos. Please stop sending me. Have you heard of this guy? That guy needs to be listening to my old videos. I don't need to be listening to his. Now, RJ's back. He's going to be confirming that later this afternoon. And I would hope that you all be here. Where? Well, on the flat earth nation with the golden age past, because the mud flood was Armageddon. Me and my friends will never tell you anything else. But 1 called, 2 chosen, 3 predestined, 4 elect, 5 adopted into the family of God. Dead in our sins, we've been made alive and have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Avedersen. Nakame. It's how I like to say